It's amazing how we do things that don't work for years, myself included. I've done for years things that don't work. And then we find something that did work and we don't repeat it
I got him started.
because part of that can be because it was uncomfortable and difficult, or that we don't know why it worked.
To go in the right direction, but he didn't have enough exposure to the right people to continue to get inspired, challenged, and see models of what's working, what's not. And as soon as he joined the community, and he said it, he's like, once I went through your sales model and I saw other people using it, I went and experimented with it. And he tested it out. It worked. He got his first client after 4 or 5 years of being in the coaching world. And then this is what he said. This was important. Then I went off on my own because I thought I would do it on my own because I got what I needed.
Coaches Nation, hello and welcome to another podcast in 2026. It's only our second one yet, but the year's been off to a great start. Today, our topic is why coaches fail without the right community. And we have to believe that because we've been running a community for years and years. So that's just because we know the power of a community, and especially of the right community. So today, I'm really excited to talk about it.
Me too.
How about you?
I'm super excited to talk about it. And I actually want to share a quote that was shared by one of our community members that's like a perfect thing to this. And he shared after our session today, I show up so I can get grounded in the presence of other fellow coaches on the journey. You are like the 5 people you spend most of your time with, can get lonely just chugging away in our own ways to build and maintain the practice. Also, to be challenged in the thinking patterns that are not serving me as well, get dislodged. And finally, of course, get inspired and pick up and add to the shared collective wisdom. You don't have to go through and spend time in ineffective ways. Like that.
In
That's a
ineffective
really
ways,
good,
yeah.
yeah, really good summary of why some
That's a
coaches
good
move forward
podcast.
and
All right,
why
I think we're
others.
done here. That's like the whole
Yeah, right.
podcast. Right? Sorry, finish what you're saying. Go ahead.
And that's the underlying feeling for a lot of coaches where it's and again we've described this feeling. You go to an event, you go through a certification, you go through a program where you got trained as a coach, you're excited, and then where you end up with is behind your computer alone sitting there. And this is a part that most coaches underestimate. They forget that they're a human being. Even if you are, if you're a little bit more conscious, you've worked on that side, you will fall into your patterns. You will go towards comfortable things. And fast forward 3 months later or 6 months later, you don't know what you're doing. You're just busy trying to be busy and
So
trying
you're
to do the
saying I'm a
uncomfortable
human.
things.
I'm not a robot,
Yeah. Well, not only like that, part of it is
not a machine.
not a machine, but I think coaches overestimate their ability to change, their ability to persevere, their ability to adapt to the changes that are coming in their life. They think that their mindset will just carry them forward to an extent, but after a while, as human beings, we all revert back to our comfortable patterns. Unless you have something, it's either an internal big purpose or a push from your experiences, or there's an environment that's pushing you to do things that are challenging and uncomfortable. And that was a theme that kept coming up, and coaches kept kind of reflecting back that it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah,
What
or
we do is
both.
we
Having both.
complicate it.
Both those are really powerful. What you just said. There's the internal drives and the external drives that can help you like make progress as a coach. And you need at least one, if not two, of those. Right? You need to have that purpose. But you also need to have that community. Even if you have the purpose, have not having community can be a huge hole in your approach. Because just because you have purpose doesn't mean you're going to be doing a lot of the right things quickly, right? Like if you have purpose and community, you have not only you have a strong drive to move forward, but you also have that course correction ability and that perspective that you're getting that you can't, even if you have a community but no sense of purpose, you may not be motivated. You kind of need a little bit of both to really drive it. And yes, purpose can be enough in the sense that if it's strong enough, you keep on trying and trying and trying, you'll get there. However, it will be a little less efficient, right? And one of the things that I think we're going to use this comment that you mentioned from our one of our pro members who said, you don't have to go through and spend time in ineffective pathways, going down the wrong path. But we had several people today sharing what the support needs they had, and most of them were actually thinking about things wrong. They were like, or not wrong, but just incomplete. And so they were potentially going down a path of action that was actually not optimal for them. That was actually counter to what they said they were looking for. And so as you explore down these pathways with them, and they realize like, actually, that's not at all a good strategy because I care about A, B, and C rather than D, E, and F. And now I realize that those mistakes can be costly if you actually don't realize you're going down the wrong path. So ineffective pathways is actually one of the most time wasting, thing that I think all of us coaches, myself included, go down.
Yeah, for sure. And so I sent an email to one of my coach friends who I've known for years, and I shared my upcoming book for her to kind of read through and give me some feedback on it. She's also writing a book too. And she congratulated me. And then the next question she asked, she said, "I'm in the middle of writing my book. Was the program you're part of effective?" And I thought about it for a second because I went through I think it was a 6-week program for me to write this book. And I intentionally went towards that because it was a community support, there was accountability, there was a coach in that process. And I answered it in this way. I said that definitely was effective. I wouldn't have written this book, even if I did write a book. It wouldn't have been this fast, even if I did end up writing the book. And it wouldn't be for the purpose that I'm writing. So I wouldn't have done what I did. Like I had a general idea if I want to write a book, but as I went through the program, it completely shifted the purpose behind it, and it completely shifted the kind of book I wrote, and it completely shifted how I wrote the book. And it had to do with the community, it had to do with the program, it had to do with the people that were part of it, who were sharing their lessons, some who had written the book, some who were in the process, some who were the mentors in the process who were teaching us about frameworks and how we were moving through it. Huge impact. I could have spent and I did spend the last 3 years thinking about writing a book. I never did it. And I like to consider that I take some make some bold moves in my business and other things, but I didn't simply because I didn't have the right community.
Not to, make small mention of your commitment to the process and your internal drive, and you showed up, right? Like, and you chose to enter that community, and you showed up, and you had time, you allocated time in your calendar, and then you could take advantage of the community, right? So part of it, there's an internal piece and an external piece, but all these external pieces of the community that you're in really are helping you not only accelerate, but actually do the thing that you want and not do it in an ineffective manner, right? Yeah.
And we also posted a testimonial from one of our other members. It was a video testimonial at the end of the call, and he got a lot of value at the end of it. And then I think, Daniel, you asked him, why did you decide to join CMC, and what has been the effect? And he said something to the effect of, because he started working with me last year and he just worked for, I think we did 5 or so sessions. That's all he could afford at that time. And then he joined the community eventually. He's like, I got him started to go in the right direction, but he didn't have enough of exposure to the right people to continue to get inspired, challenged, and see models of what's working, what's not. And as soon as he joined the community, and he said it, he's like, once I went through your sales model and I saw other people using it, I went and experimented with it. And he tested it out. It worked. He got his first client after 4 or 5 years of being in the coaching world. And then this is what he said. This was important. Then I went off on my own because I thought I would do it on my own because I got what I needed. He went off and he got off track again. And then he came, he was like, well, I guess I need the community for me to sustain this.
It's amazing how we do things that don't work for years, myself included. I've done for years things that don't work. And then we find something that did work and we don't repeat it
Yeah.
because part of that can be because it was uncomfortable and difficult, or that we don't know why it worked, right? So there's this actually, somebody told me one of the greatest ways to learn is to think about what worked and why when things happen, and then what didn't work and why didn't it work. But then what worked that shouldn't have worked, like things that shouldn't have worked, like there's some learning in there about why things worked. Like it doesn't make sense that it worked. So like why did it work and why shouldn't it have worked? And then the opposite, what shouldn't have worked but did. So like if you think about your learning from a like what worked and what didn't point of view, you can get somewhere. But when you have a community to help you understand what really worked, like, and part of having communities, having people who are ahead of you that can share like lessons from the field, and having people that are right alongside you, so you have peers, and people that are behind you, so you can also support and provide that inspiration for them. A community is like such an interesting word because it allows you to understand that there's relationships here, right? There's relationships here, and those relationships can be mutually beneficial, right? Even if you're ahead of somebody and you're helping them, you're learning something while you teach it, or while you share it, or while you explain what you've learned. It's a way for you to learn it better. So there's a lot of relationship building that helps people accelerate in their path, especially when people are all together for the same type of goal.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Today, I did a training right before this call in my other community for entrepreneurs and investors. We were talking about physiology mastery. It's like, what does it take? And it's funny, whenever I talk about energy, health, physiology, my physiology is usually broken. It's like somehow it ends up being around. So I had to start with those examples. And my best example was this is how I broke my back because I was unintentional and I had to
Ah,
own the parts, own the parts that were there. But as I was kind of speaking through it, I could see the faces of my members and they're like nodding and they're smiling. They're seeing the human parts of it. It's like I do the same shit over and over until we hear each other's examples. Like, we can either learn from our experience or other people's experiences or combination of those. And for human beings, this is how we learn. Like at the basic foundations of who we are as human beings is we learn from models around us. As kids, we watch somebody older than us model something for us. We watch our peers. We watch somebody younger than us. We support them with the same thing. So, and it's very interesting. In a like we have a grow like we still have young children, and I have a 9-year old, a 6-year old, and now a 7-month old. And it's really cool to see what we modeled for the 9-year old. She's modeling for the 6-year old, the good and the bad. There
oh
are,
yeah, tell me
that
about
is the worst
it.
thing to see. The good you feel proud about, you feel happy about. When you see the things that are not effective, you're like, holy shit. And we literally have to go to her and like, this is how we're framing it. This is hilarious. I
I love that. One day out of the blue, my 3-year-old at the time said he like we have struggles getting ready for bed for the with the two kids and sometimes and so I knew that I was part of the problem when he goes so I was playing piano and then he goes out of the blue he goes Daniel it's 8 o'clock because that's what my wife might say if I'm playing piano and it's bedtime.
uh,
So she was probably trying to tell him like, let's get ready for bed. And then sometimes she must have said that enough times that he picked up on it, right? And then he said it to me is like, that's just what happens in this scenario. So, like that was like, a little bit of a wake up call for me to hear him say that. And also, I think, to bring us back to the topic, when we hear other people say things or do things that sometimes they don't compute initially for us like in our community, somebody will share something. We're like, oh, that's a really great strategy, or I can kind of see why that might not have worked. It helps us learn something. There's both a positive role modeling and a reverse role modeling, which is like what not to do sometimes, right? And you get it both ways. And even all the time from people in the community, I see them doing things. I'm like, that's actually a really good point that I could do better at that, And remembering like we can learn from all directions. It's not just in one direction.
Yeah, there's a technical challenge here on the business side because one of the most powerful things that I've learned in business is timing is so important.
Mhm.
Problem with especially founders or people who are starting startups or businesses that are kind of from ground up and they're building, there are different stages and that you have different stages of growth in business. Now the problem is that you don't have a frame of reference as to what the stage is. And you might be out online seeing people at different stages of business teaching different things, but it might not clearly apply to you. But
Not
somehow
clear.
you're
Yeah.
convinced that that's your stage, but it's not. And one of the most powerful things that happens in a community setting where you have people in at different stages of their business and they go into the details. So they're not just sharing the overall model of their business, they're showing their struggles, the details of what they're doing, what's working, what's
Mhm.
not. And they're actually going out there and testing something. And this is live feedback from the marketplace. This is working, this is not working, this is working at this stage, but this is not working at this stage. Even if you're an observer sitting there on the sidelines, you will gain so much real data as to what works in your kind of specific business with the people who are trying it out versus this on some podcast that you don't actually know because they're presenting the best version of what it is for their business and for that model that worked because they're promoting their business, but they're not talking about the details and the struggles and the nuances it takes for you to build a business. So you might be in one stage and you're listening to somebody completely in a different stage and you start to think that that applies to me. It might not at all. In fact, it will take you the wrong direction. Unless you're in the
Mhm.
right community, you're hearing the right things and you're seeing the context, the nuance and the subtleties of what's working and what's not.
Yeah, and what you're really describing here is like okay, so first off, like nothing can replace real world business experience, right? Like you going through the process of building a business, of trying to get clients, nothing can replace that. right? But some things can really give you some, it's like you can't really replace riding a bike with reading the books,
Yeah.
but having somebody in front of you riding the bike, showing you some of the mechanics can actually help you gain a little bit of experience. But even more so in business where you're seeing scenarios play out, it's a little different than riding a bike because you actually have to get on the bike to get any experience at all. But with business, you can get some level of experience from others' insights and others' actual experience. If I tell you a story about how I got on the bike, depending how detailed I got, you're probably not going to be able to immediately apply that. But in business, it's a little bit different because you might be able to see like that scenario that is not applicable to me, but this one is very applicable to me. I can just take that piece of it that I needed and apply it. And you can transfer real world business experience to some degree in these conversations. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a community of people who are talking about coaching and business in the way that we do is that you can share these business experiences and you can learn like what's happening on the ground. And there is some degree of transferability to some of the ideas and some of the questions, but everybody can take that and understand how it applies to them. We often ask that, like, how does this insight apply to you specifically? What are you taking away from this for you? Granted that it's very different for each person, and it usually is very different for each person.
And so there's another component to, at least in our specific community, it's a little bit different. So we don't have huge groups, and in fact, our long-term plan is to still have small groups, which means that we're not just leveraging the wisdom of the community. We actually have mentors that are facilitating the calls. So we're actually digging into your specific business model, and like we spend quite a bit of time with each member to try to figure out what the challenge is specific to your context, and we're guiding it. So the bike analogy actually applies. I remember teaching my second daughter how to ride a bike. It was this last summer, and my older daughter had to learn how to bike, and she was beside me. So consider her as a member of a community. I'm the mentor, and my younger daughter is learning how to bike, and the biggest problem she had was she was scared she was going to fall. I knew that she just needs to get enough on it so the fear goes away. But what my older daughter didn't realize when she was going through the process, she had forgotten that. What she was thinking about is that she just needs to do it right. So she kept giving her feedback. I literally had to stop her.
Well, that's a great analogy.
Literally had to stop her. I'm like, Alia, I know you're trying to be helpful, but what she doesn't need to hear do it this way. She just needs to get on the bike. She needs a little bit more encouragement. Once she gets that, then we can teach her the techniques a little bit more. So she just needed enough encouragement and support so she gets over her fear of moving forward. Most coaches are struggling with that. And so the community members can share their experiences, but then the mentor can guide. Sometimes it's encouragement, sometimes it's pulling what they need to work on. So, like a perfect example today, I could have gone towards, hey, you need these things. I stuck for 10 minutes to how this coach was thinking about their life and how discouraging he was being towards himself. And I wanted the other coaches to hear the same thing. It works the same way. Yes, they needed to hear other people's experiences, but they needed somebody to dig in to see that no, they've done a lot. They just need to move towards, encourage themselves to go towards a positive direction.
That's actually why I love that example of the bike because this is actually why how-to information doesn't always work very well because the how-to is a method, but it doesn't address the underlying resistance or the underlying fear or the thing that's missing is internal, right? The mindset or the avoidance, whatever it is. Like there's a certain level of how-to that everybody needs for sure, but the how-to doesn't always like. And as you mentioned, the one person in our community who got the how to, went and did it, and then got really uncomfortable doing it again. Made them do other things, right? We don't do the thing that worked because we're very uncomfortable with it and we struggle. Whatever the growth area for you is, there's a struggle there. Every growth requires us to try hard things. And even if we know the how to, it doesn't mean we're willing to try it. Somebody could tell me, like, even though I've got a harness and I'm up in the ropes course, and they could tell me how to jump off the platform, but it doesn't mean it's not going to do it, right? Just knowing how to jump off the platform does not mean I'm willing to or able to in my current mind state, right? So, like, I love that you brought up that example because it's very much like that in the business world. We're afraid to do things. We're very afraid to do
Yeah.
things because we retreat into safety rather than like forge ahead into the pain of growth, right?
And this is what we've learned also on the coaching skills side. So for years, for example, in our community, we ran a coaching chain that actually gave a lot of value. I've gone through it. Daniel has gone through it. Even before the community was a paid membership community, it was like a completely volunteer effort. We all got value from the process where we connected a coach with another coach. They coached them and then they gave them feedback, and we went through a chain. So we didn't get the coach to coach each other. We got the next person to coach them. So there was a specific role of a coach with this person, and then the other one was a client. So it
We
shifted the
did that like
dynamic.
20 plus times.
Yeah, so it was like close to
Rounds.
4 years, 4 years
Yeah,
that
something like
we
that.
yeah.
It was a lot of
But
rounds.
there was a huge lesson that we got out of it. One, the surprising lesson from all the data was that coaches actually suck at giving feedback.
Yeah.
We
It's amazing.
our initial assumption was we literally would say that like first we would say like they're grown adults, they can give each other feedback. That didn't work, and then we're like, well, they're coaches, they can leverage some of their influence abilities to do. So we gave them instructions that like they should work with minimal instruction. But this is what would happen more often than not in every coaching chain, every quarter, I would get these messages. Hey, I did a session with this person. I wanted to give her this feedback, but I didn't because I didn't want to offend her, or I thought it would be too hard. They didn't know how to deliver the feedback, and
Then we
and
actually gave them a framework on how to deliver feedback, and that didn't work either.
it still didn't
And then
work.
we
And what we
realized
were
that this is never going to work the way we wanted it
And
to.
not only that, like they had everything they needed, but they were so uncomfortable that they wouldn't even do the feedback. They needed
Yeah.
to spend about at least 15 minutes. There were a few coaches who were really good at the process. They would spend 30 plus minutes on the feedback, and that was the most valuable piece. That would actually help develop their skill sets. But most of them didn't even spend 2 minutes for the feedback part. And that was the whole point of the coaching chain. But what we learned in the process is no, we need to put them in a very uncomfortable position, force them to get feedback. And that's what turned into
Yes.
our coaching sales clinic now, which is so
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's so much easier to just like coaching is hard for most humans. With coaches, it's easier to coach more and to like extend the session than to actually stop and be like, okay, how do we do? What's the feedback? It's like not only did the coach not want that feedback emotionally, potentially, like there's a resistance to receiving feedback, or they might feel they couldn't handle it, or that maybe they did not want to give it as a client because they were uncomfortable doing it. So they just would stop. And so, like, yeah, that makes sense. Feedback is often a hard thing for most humans, and coaches are no exceptions. They are also humans. so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
And again, this is an environment where we're forcing somebody to be there uncomfortably. It's actually much easier to go through a certification and to learn a bunch of models and go apply it in the background one on one with somebody and then say, oh, I got a certification. But when we, in our community, once a month, when we meet two coaches, a coach and a client, and there are like five, six, 10 observers, very vulnerable situation to be in. You're being watched by other professionals, you're delivering something. You have to keep in mind that you cannot do performative coaching, which is hard in that environment to do. And on top of that, then there's a client as well who needs to be vulnerable. And then at the end, you're getting feedback from different kind of coaches who you need to put in context, what applies for me, what doesn't. I think it accelerates your growth 10 times. And we learned that by experience. And then nobody taught us that model. Like I got a lot of feedback from my mentors, other coaches that I work with, some by chance, some because they were just nice, some because they were being asked. Whatever the case is, it all was all helpful. And then
yeah,
we
we just kept on
incorporated that.
iterating. We just kept on iterating, right? And
Yeah.
like trying to make it better and trying to make it more valuable. And we eventually realized we need to change the way that we're doing these. And that's
Yeah.
where the coaching sales clinic came from.
Yeah, and the ROI of that is the effect of that is that we're not only pushing, challenging our coaches to be better in business, but they're actually realizing what is working in their coaching model and what is not. Because we find out very quickly that coaches who have a sustainable business versus those who don't, they actually give different feedback. And they see different aspects of the coaching process because they know what works in the marketplace, what doesn't, what goes deeper, what doesn't, versus those who have just gone through a certification. Their model is completely based on theory. They haven't tested it out. So they get feedback that directs them, at least directionally, they're going in the right direction. And then all of a sudden they start seeing improvements in their coaching process.
This is another idea of community. Like a community also iterates and improves the experience. And not only because the people who are running the community or leading it are improving it, it's the members of the community that are demonstrating what the improvements are. And they're also sharing in that process. And so when you have a community that wants to improve, that wants to iterate, that wants to keep on getting better, you know that you're going to be able to influence that improvement. Right. And so that's one of the things I like about CMC is that we're always trying to innovate and improve. But we've also found some things that do work and definitely have found some things that don't work. And we're always everything's an experiment to see what works, and that's the way I encourage everybody to approach their coaching business too. You're going out and you're testing it, you're seeing what works and you're seeing what doesn't work for you and for the people that you're connecting with. And we have some general processes that will work for everyone, but how you do that for you is different for so Like there's so many pieces of this. And as I look at that, we started off with that quote from one of our members. I want to go over some of those points again. I want to read it again. I show up so I can get grounded in the presence of other fellow coaches. We need grounding. We need the presence of other fellow coaches on the journey. It is a journey. We need to journey together. That's why the Coaches Journey podcast, it's not grammatically incorrect. It's the coaches, plural. We journey. It's a verb. And so like on the journey with coaches, right? And you are like the people you spend most time with, that is a reminder of who are you going to be around, the people that are committed to that journey together, right? That's the people that we're around, people who will be here to help you improve, just like everybody else in the community. And it can get lonely just chugging away in our own ways to build and maintain the practice. Yes, it does get lonely. You can be a coach sitting behind your screen. You can just be chugging away in your own way. But like, are you building and maintaining the practice? Are you practicing the things? Are you staying in the game? And that's where a community can totally change the game for you. And then he said also to be challenged in the thinking patterns. Absolutely, we've talked about that a lot today. Is like the thinking patterns that go on in our own heads. We have a hard time seeing that until they're exposed in a community setting where you can get actual direct coaching, or you hear somebody else say the thing. Those things that aren't serving you well, you can dislodge them, right? Those patterns not serving you well get dislodged, and that's really true. And finally, of course, he says get inspired. So that's something that happens every single week. I get inspired every single week, and so do our members. And then pick up and add to the shared collective wisdom. You're here to contribute too. That's a great community, means there's opportunities for you to contribute, not just receive. And then you don't have to go through and spend time in ineffective pathways. So true. It's like so many things you can do for a long time and figure out, like we did. We had some ineffective pathways ourselves, but you can shorten that learning curve and that time to results by being in a community like this. I love that he shared this quote. We'll have to post that on our
And and if you are actually
website.
sincere or serious about building your business, join a community that feels aligned with you. And if what we've shared feels aligned with you, join our free community at cmc.coach. You will see the kind of value that we provide even for the members that are completely free in our community. And then you can decide to join our community later, test it out for yourself. We broadcast these podcasts. You might be listening to this or watching this weeks later, but we broadcast this live to our free community. And then, of course, we have different tiers depending on how much involvement coaches have. If you're actively building your coaching business and you want to go towards mastering your coaching skill sets, this is the right community. You'll be around other coaches who are actually doing the work, not just going from one course to the next or one certification to the next, and they've been in the coaching business for 5-6 years, they haven't done anything, but they're actively building their business. If you actually want to build a business that sustains your lifestyle and moves your purpose forward to serve, then this is the right community for you. Please share this with any coach that needs to hear the message behind this. We're not attached to you joining the community, but we know how many coaches are, most coaches are struggling with doing this alone and completely getting distracted by all kinds of marketing materials that are not serving them.
Awesome. And if you have anything to add to this conversation, go ahead and reply to this podcast or broadcast wherever you're seeing it. And we will see you next time on the Coach's Journey podcast. Thanks for listening.
Take care.